So moved.
And second,
Second.
any questions, comments, edits anyone wants to make? Okay, all in favor say yes. Yes. And the approval of minutes passes. And then we go to approval of vouchers. And again, we've had a chance to look at those before our meeting tonight. Do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
And anyone have any questions that our general manager can answer for us on that? Okay, all in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes, and that also passes. Project status report, General Manager, can you
Madam
bring us
Chair,
up to
if
date?
we'll go over the monthly reports, if that's all right.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, I'm sorry, getting ahead of myself.
That was good because that would be a good one to pass because it's not good news
Okay,
in electric. So thank you for that food pile that seemed to be working real well in my favor. But I would like to, if you indulge me, to take a moment. We're doing great in water and sewer. We're ahead of budget and all of that. What things that we put in place a while back seem to be working really well. In the electric, we are in a negative position for July of 80,000, and if you will allow me a learning moment here, I'd like to talk a little bit about why that is, and it'll get a little bit into the weeds, but I think it will be worthwhile, especially for some of those that are new on the board. So if you'll look on your screen, I'm going to talk about the demand charge and the load factor, and it's going to be specific to July, which is what is represented in your statements, and the cost of the power in your statements of what you're looking at now, which reflects in that $80,000 loss. The facts on the load factor, and I'm going to explain some of this, but I'm going to start out with some facts. 5-year, and I'll tell you what a load factor is further on, but 5-year load factor for July is 63.63%. The load factor for July of last year was 62.74, which is in line with that. The load factor for July of this year was 58.83. That's about a 5% reduction in the load factor, which is significant. It's also the lowest load factor we've had since the 2011 rate change, and I'll tell you how that plays into it also. Just trying to get the facts out here. Electric sales revenue less power cost. July of last year, the difference was 2.2 million. This is all of the sales for electric that we have, less the power costs that we've got to pay TVA. And that's really the margin that we work on and the funds that are available to pay everything else. As you can see, there was a $380,000 shortfall between July 2023 and July of 2022. That's significant because that is right off the bottom line. In July of 2022, our KWH from 2023 was down 4.3% or 2,500,000 KWH. And our KW demand was up 2% or 2,500 KW, the exact opposite of what you want, because we're paying on the KWH and we're paying on the KW and we need the KWH to backfill that in order to get our money. So a little history. Prior to 2011, CUB's monthly power bill had no demand or power component to it for standard services, which is non-industrial, residential, and these big commercial customers is what that represents. All we did was pay for the energy. For every kilowatt hour that was consumed, that's what we paid for. That's all that we cared about. When it was used, how often it was used, didn't matter. And we sat in the middle of that and got a fixed margin of about 2 to 3 cents for every KWH. So if KWH was down, our power bill was down, we always maintained that safe margin of 2 to 3 cents for every KWH. It was working great for us, and we call that in-use billing. Well, TVA, they decided in 2011 that structure wasn't working for them, so they changed the end-use billing to a demand and energy rate. And that's when it did make a difference when you used it, and it's a big deal. By moving from the end-use rate to a demand and energy rate, TVA effectively shifted the cost risk associated with these large spikes. So where they held the risk, now they moved it to all of the LPCs. So now we've got to worry about when we use and how much power we use, and that is all within a 1 month period. So you've got energy in KWH versus demand and power KW. It's a little confusing. How much everything that you consume is in KWH, kilowatts per hour. How fast do you use it, or when do you demand that to be used? That's KW. That's what spikes up, and that's what TVA charges us on. So I used a fire truck and a hose to try to show a little bit. If your house was burning and you needed 500 gallons to put it out, and you didn't care how long it took, you could use a hose. That cost $8. But if you want it out really quick, you're going to have to call that fire truck in there. That can put it out in 5 minutes, and that truck costs 600 plus thousand. And that's what TVA is saying. If you call the fire truck, you're going to pay. You're going to pay dearly for that. So the demand or power component measured in KW, which is 1,000 watts, and if you have 10 100-watt light bulbs on for an hour, that's 1,000 watts. And if you have it on for an hour, that's a kilowatt hour. So they charge us for the average of the highest amount of kilowatts, 1,000 watts consumed in a clock hour. And the energy charge is measured in KWH, which is a charge for everything that's consumed for every 1,000 watt hour. KWH, 1,000 watts for an hour. KW is 1,000 watts. Stop me if you need to. TVA's peak, what they charge us, our demand charge, is $10.35 for every KW. In the fall, the winter, and the spring, and in the summer, which is represented here in this month, July, they charge $11.30 per KW at the peak. So the demand charge is on top of our power bill, and that could be as much as a third of our whole power bill. Now, to give you an example, a 2,000 watt small heater, if you run a 2,000 watt small heater for an hour, that's 2 kWh. And we charge about 10 cents per kWh, so we're going to charge the customer about 20 cents for that. What TVA, and if you're in the peak hour, that 2 kW or 2 watts kW, that's $11.30 times 2 is $22.60. So we pay TVA $22.60 plus the cost of the energy, which is about 7 to 8 cents per kilowatt hour. So the difference then is significant, where we're charging 20 cents essentially, and we're paying better than $22.60 for that. We have to make that up. And how you make that up is selling a lot of kilowatt hours, you see. So the demand charge for TVA is recalculated every month. Every month it sets back at zero. And then they look at the highest clock hour in that month. There's 720 clock hours in a normal month. This is actual. Our demand for what our peak day fell on July the 28th, which happened to be Nancy's and my anniversary. We were married 50 years. And what happens is we hit peak on that day. At between 5 and 6 p.m., we hit our peak, and it was at 124 megawatts, which are 1,000 kilowatts. So we were able to shave peak by 3.58 megawatts. We started pulling levers, as you can see, at this 2 p.m. Is when we started pulling levers, and then we pulled more levers as we got close to that 5 and 6 p.m. when we saw that this was going to be one of our peak days. Throughout the month, we were pulling levers because we don't know what hour on what day that we're going to hit peak. So the difference between regulated and unregulated, if we saved 2.58 megawatts, is 3,580 kilowatts, which is at $11.30. It's a savings to us of $40,454. Now, this is our peak shaving. We've been doing this since the rate change in 2011. Not everybody can do this. Not most people can do this. I don't know of anybody with our virtual power plant of what we've got in the valley that does what we do. Chattanooga does similar things. Even Knoxville can do some of this, but well over 100 of the 150 LPCs can't do any of that. So we're now saving that money, which is good, but we still have to pay TVA for what we're not able to shave. And that TVA charged us for demand for that month 126 kW, 126,000 kW at 1130. That's $1,400,000, and to make that up, we've got to sell 47,800,000 kWh, and our total sales were just 55 million. So there's not a lot of movement in that, a lot of stretch. All of that plays in then to what we call the load factor, and that's kWh over kW. This is our load factor for July 2023. This diagram shows the average kW or kilowatt hours that could be used in that red box. Everything in there can be used for kWh sales. Now, the dark blue area represents the average daily kilowatt hours used over the month, and the purple line above it represents the peaks on the day for that month. And you finally get to the end of the month where you see that peak goes to the top of the red line. The purple shaded area is underutilized capacity because that shows from the average daily kWh use to the maximum they used in that day. They used some, but they didn't use it all. So that's all underutilized capacity. What really kills us is the wasted area, and that's all in yellow. Essentially, we paid for that capacity in the demand charge that we paid, but we didn't use any of that in the yellow. So everything in the yellow and purple shaded areas is capacity CUB paid for, but didn't fully use or didn't use at all. The long-term solution for this is sending a price signal to these non-industrial users through a time of use billing, essentially aligning rates to better reflect real-time costs. That's essentially what TVA did to us. You say, when you use it makes a difference. Historically, when you used it, didn't make any difference. And in 2011, they come in and say, well, no, if you affect our peak, then we're going to affect you. And that's, again, millions of dollars of what they're charging us for this demand factor. And we are not sending any signal to the end user saying, go ahead and dry your clothes on August afternoon, and it's going to cost you the same as if you dried it in the middle of the night. Same thing in the winter. So the long term, and this has already started in the valley. I know of at least one, I don't know if you know of any more, but at least one is now doing time of use billing on residential and small commercial customers. So it does matter to them. I have been opposed to that and will continue to oppose that until we can better educate our public, because the ones that can afford this the least are the ones that are going to be impacted the most. And that's the folks that just don't understand how it all works. I want smart metering in their home, smart plugs, so it'll signal out. We can send price signals. Don't dry your clothes. Don't turn your washer on. Don't do any of that now because we're in this critically high period. We do that with currently with hot water heaters. People that sign up for what we have, and we see that we're running in a peak period. That's one of the levers that Todd uses in order to save our peak. In order to do that, so I'm just saying that we are so tied to the weather when we get 4 really great hot days, and KWH is flying out, and then we get moderate days, and KWH isn't. It's not enough to backfill that high peak that you saw in August, and that's essentially what happened to us. We had a peak, and we didn't have the backfill of the KWH to fill it up. So questions on that? I know it's a little granular, but I really like the opportunity to give you some backfill insight. And there is more nuance to this, but I tried to not get too deep into what affects the KW and the KWH.
Greg, can you explain how TVA came to the 126 megawatts?
Yes, because what we do, this is a SCADA, how we use our SCADA,
Yep.
which is where we got that 124 essentially. TVA has billing because this is for the services that this doesn't provide for is the industry. And so TVA calculates all of that in. But our situation is different on how it affects us for demand. That's more of a pass-through kind of thing. So they charge us for that, but we charge the industry for that. So it's not fair. That's why when I put down, it doesn't nuance everything, but those are actual numbers, and they also include what the industry has to pay.
Yeah, the reason I ask is the scenario you gave where CUB saved $40,000. Did we really save $40,000?
Oh yes,
Okay.
because that doesn't include the 126. That's only working on the 124.
Yeah.
We actually save an average of 65 to 70,000 a month for a year. I mean, I can tell you, and because it's in your packet too, in your board book. If you look, when we started this in 2011, we've saved on shaving that peak $11,658,336 because we know exactly when we go into start pulling these levers, we know exactly the impact that has. Boy, you're getting good, Jones, over there. That's pretty impressive. And now you can blow up that 11 million. That would be really, really impressive. So that's where we got, and we track it by month, by day, and that's where we're at right now. 11,724,758.
The yellow shaded area you referred to as
Wasted.
unused, wasted. Is there any way to sell that to Lenore City or get credit card?
No, what a great thought that is. Lenore City has got a bigger yellow streak than what we do. You see, because they are not able to have the same capability.
Does everybody have the yellow?
Everybody has the yellow.
Is.
Everybody has the yellow. Everybody has the purple. The load factor is what you want is a plateau. You don't want the Swiss Alps, you say. So what we do on those peaks, we round it. That's where we save our money. But in order to get the KWH up to the peaking part, is you got to send a price signal to say if you use your KWH in a peaking part, you're going to pay dearly for that. We'll catch our money back up by doing that. But we think that we can moderate that to where we won't have those higher peaks because everybody, I'm telling you, I want you to dry your clothes at 2:00 in the morning. I mean, that's the best time. Set your set your dryer to do that.
The firemen would tell you not to do that though, because that's the number one source of house fires.
Exactly.
Close.
And that's why they need to get that information out there. But I'm saying 2 o'clock. Well, do it at 10 o'clock at night.
So the other assumption here is, or the other fixed number, is what they charge us.
That's correct.
And what they charge us is based on the inefficiencies of the other utilities. Because the inefficiency of the other utilities is driving up their cost.
No doubt about it.
And therefore, the follow through on that should be they either to further incent them, the other utilities, to come in line, or they need to be punitive rather than, because my assumption, I mean, we're getting a credit, I get it, but that credit doesn't seem to be enough to motivate everybody else to get in line, right?
Again, yes, that's very insightful, Steve. The bottom line is we have a method, and we have proposed this method to TVA and it deals with the carrot and the stick, because they can't moderate their peak. That I'm telling you, they don't even have AMI for their meters.
Right.
So there's nothing that they can do. Send a guy out in a truck and just lower the voltage. Not going to do it.
So I mean, so the way that if it's a handful or on one hand or us, if it's that small, it seems like the other thing they could do is incent us to go help those other facilities and or provide capital to be able to implement what.
Well,
needs to be
that's
done.
the point that I'm making, is they
Yeah,
need to
yes.
provide the capital, and the payback on the capital
Yeah.
can be the cost savings,
That's right.
because they're
But-
off the valley buying power on these peak periods.
But there's not enough
Incentive.
carrot or stick, whichever you want to call it, for them for the utilities to dive in and go do it. And until there is, we're going to kind of continue. I mean, this is an anomaly. I get it, but I mean, there's still no incentive for people. There is incentive, but I mean, on the TVA side, it's just rolling what it is, and they just manage it. So that's not that assumes that fixed costs are fixed, and I'm not a real big fan of fixed costs are fixed.
Well,
So-
these demand charges are going up in
Yeah.
October.
Yeah.
The
Because of inefficiencies.
boards, the governing bodies of these utilities, have no idea. They couldn't. You talk about a load factor, and that would be something that they would consider maybe a diaper for a kid. I mean, they just not going to be able to figure all of that out. And the problem is management is so inexperienced. They're overwhelmed with how to get from here to there on that kind of issue, when all they're concerned about are the lights on. They're not concerned about the total cost, because all they have to do is raise rates in order to meet their operation cost. And they say, well, we need a 4% raise, increase in that, and everybody's good to go, because this takes a long-term commitment. And we're saying, as you say, with the stick, if you're not able to save peak, then there should be a penalty associated with that, as well as the cost savings involved in doing that.
It's a little bit of a conflict on TVA side, because they're making more money by doing it this way.
When they shifted the risk
Right.
to us, they're making
That's the
more money.
primary motivation.
And
behind
that's
it.
why I'm unwilling to recommend that we shift that
Right.
to our customers until they're ready to deal with it.
I always, when in our business, when our insurance companies, which is our most of our payers come from, when they switch the methodology, it's never to our advantage,
Right.
ever. And
Right.
if you notice that anybody gets paid from a business perspective, when the people that are upstream of you change the methodologies, you can assume that you're about to get screwed. So
What most utilities, the overwhelming majority, they have to set a rate structure that insulates them from this very thing happening.
Yeah.
Because were we not able to say peak, and again, this is the lowest month I've seen in a very, very long time. Were they not able to say it? It would be another 40,000 in the hole on that. You see, so they've got to have a rate structure that buffers them from this. So I mean, so that's why the rates are high. With this 11 million that you see here, all has gone back into our system. You see, that's why when you look at conductor, and we're going to reconductor this, we got a work order coming up for that. All of that is to improve the system, and the a lot of money, capital outlay, goes into system improvement. And where we get that, and we're not borrowing the money to do that. We're essentially using the savings off of our ability to shave peak, which again, at 70,000 a month times 12 is a lot of money. All of that goes back into the system. Sooner or later, we're going to hit a point to where our system now is so tight that that money then will now start flowing back into the general fund pot. And at that time, so help me, I'll be coming to you and asking you for a rate reduction, because I don't think we should have. There are utilities that have $40 million in the hopper, way too much cash, where you're talking about 60 days worth of cash, and all you're doing is, to me, the ratepayers are forward funding that, and I'm opposed to that. We set a rate to where if at the end of the year we've got enough to do our capital outlay for the next year and meet all operation and maintenance costs, that's a good rate. Plus or minus 100,000, that's good. Not plus or minus 2 or 3 million. That's not good. That's not fair to the current ratepayer, in my opinion.
Greg, you were saying recommend to folks that they dry their clothes at 2 in the morning.
Well, anything off peak.
Well, I was going to say, is there a way to identify the bad times to dry your clothes during the day and let them know if it's
Yeah.
dynamic? Does it change from day to day?
Yes, it does. It does, and the weather, and sometimes it makes no difference at all. Everything is predicated on how we can avoid 60 minutes in a month. That's all we care about.
I mean, I can see somebody like my wife. She's not going to get up at 2 in the morning to dry clothes.
No,
But
no.
if you sent her something that said, don't dry your clothes between 11 and 1, she'd probably do
Or
that.
better yet, you hit dry clothes, and this module on your receptacle goes out and finds out what the cost is and says, well, if you wait 2 hours, it's going to cost you, 85 cents less. That's really what you want to get to. That's the automation that I think our customers ought to have before we say, here's a rate, and if you hit us on the peak, we're going to kill you on your cost. And that's essentially what TVA says. Although we saw it coming, which is why we were ready in 2011, and the others weren't. That's millions and millions of dollars down. I tell you again, Oak Ridge doesn't even have automatic meter reading, and they can't do any of this, begin any of this, unless they have that minimum first step.
What kind of buy-ins would it take for Clinton to have that on my dryer or your dryer or whatever to get that feedback?
I would think it could be done relatively inexpensively, because they're already putting out appliances, what they call smart appliances, that have Wi-Fi connections, and what Cub would be doing is sending out the signals to all of those appliances, what the price is, and what the anticipated price is, and what the optimum times are for them to use KWH. And then you just set it and let it go.
It would take an education process. If my wife thought she was saving 85 cents, that wouldn't mean no hell beans to her.
She would.
She'd have to understand the longer
She
term.
would, after 30 days of 85 cents, you say, or $1.40 or 7. Now all of a sudden your power bill's gone up $60. that's just $2
Well, that's
a
where the
day.
education comes in. I
Right.
understand that.
And I put that onus on TVA. TVA needs to have a valley-wide education program and an answer to these questions. You've got to have the equipment ready to rock and roll, and this is what you'll do. We can help them with that. We've got folks now that, again, not many can do it, but we've got them to where they've got instrumentation at their house because they pay forward like they do gas in their car, and that meter goes down, and they see, well, you turn on a heater in your bathroom. Some people just automatically do that, and mom sees that meter going, and it's going. It's like a thing on a cab. You go, oh, you better turn that off. That's done great for that, but they are completely savvy into how to moderate what they use because that meter's sitting there. A lot of them put it right there in the kitchen, saying, "Oh well, we got to do something about
They
this."
just need the Wi-Fi to their TV up in the left-hand corner. A little
That's the
box
truth.
that
Or-
constantly
or-
reads to
Or
them.
or a danger. My Samsung, when my dryer goes off, it tells me, "No, you can't." My dryer goes off, it says close or dry. So you got a red light going on, or a yellow light, or a green light, or something like that. I'm saying that's really good.
I bet Nancy did that. I bet Nancy said, "Hey, she probably wired that thing in to tell you to go get the clothes out."
I will do it too.
Sorry, madam.
Well, thank you for letting me take a minute out on all of that because, again, you are miles ahead in the understanding of the intricacies. I mean, there's a lot going on as to how, and we're on top of this every day, trying to, and we're shaving peak every day. It only is effective on that 60 minutes of the one day of the month when we hit our peak.
Well, I appreciate the time that you've taken because those of us that have been on the board need reviews every now and then to remind us, and new people need to know this too. So thank you.
You're
What
welcome.
about the other? Are there any questions for Greg for this? Okay. What about the other monthly reports?
All good unless there's a question. Again, we are rocking and rolling in water and sewer. We continue to rock and roll. I look forward, by the way, in electric to have a better month next month. I'm thinking that the power factor is going to be better, and we should have a better margin to work with, revenue over power cost.
Because of the weather, our September is usually one of our worst months for this type of thing.
Well, September is what they call a transition month, so really what you're looking at in September is July's statements. So really July, we had $500,000 in net income last July. $500,000 net income. Now, we had $138,000 more in July this year than last year because of right-of-way alone, because we were low in the crews, and then Todd gassed them up and got them back up to, how many do we have now out there cutting?
12.
We got 12 crews out there cutting, which was the full complement. We had about half of that last year. So that 138,000 hit this July that didn't reflect in last July. And every industry that we had didn't meet the target we had for consumption in July for some unknown reason.
Well, it is what it is.
It is absolutely what it is.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on any of the reports before we move on? Okay. Thank you for that information.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
Now we will go to project status report.
Project status report. If you'll look, we're tracking 2 projects in electric. And both of these you are aware of. They're not new, and I can tell you that the Madeiras McAdoo Street upgrade is going very well. It was scheduled to be completed in November, and now we really think that can be done by the end of October. So that's a little ahead of schedule on this aerial cable. The right-of-way clearing on that's been completed, and we're just now beginning the actual construction. and that is scheduled to be done by the end of December, and we don't see any holdups in that happening. So unless you've got an additional question on that, that's all I have, Madam Chairman.
Okay, any questions about either of those? Okay, then let's move on to the approval of the purchase order. And can you explain a little bit of that to us before we vote?
Yes, ma'am. What we do periodically is we order our transformers, and these are, as you see, all different kVA, 10s, 15s, 25s, 50s, 75s, and 100. And then we bid those out. We bid them out by grouping, and we also bid them out as a whole. And you can see DECO here is at 255,000. They are the low. We're satisfied with their delivery period for these, and we're looking to pick up all of these transformers, and I recommend that the board approve the transformer quotation of $255,461 as low bid.
Okay, do I hear a motion for approval?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Before we vote?
Yeah.
Those discrepancies in the delivery and the cost are shocking to me. Have we done business with DECO before?
Oh, yes.
Yes,
Okay.
they're one of the normal suppliers on that.
We're thrilled.
Yeah,
I mean, it's great, but it seems too good to be true. That's why I wanted to stop and ask and make sure.
now we're thrilled as well. We asked the same question back to them, and it came back at I think each one of the suppliers has a certain allocation from each manufacturer, and it just so happens that DECO here has an allocation that they haven't met yet for maybe the first quarter of next year.
Okay.
Whenever those come in, whereas Gresco's already sold their allocation. Now what they're allotted is later in the year.
Yeah, because
It's
you're dead on, because I was hearing the same thing, and
It's-
it's about a fourth or a third of what we've seen before.
it is, and to
Yeah,
get to 16, 18 weeks now, well, our fingers are crossed that they'll actually arrive as promised.
Yeah, I mean, I know just in the data center industry, it's a year and a half. It's 18
That-
months.
Pad mounts.
Anything.
See, pad mounts are a different story. These are pole mounts. Pad mounts are different, and that's all the underground, and that's been a real challenge. Even the hurricanes have impacted that because everything's going south.
So
Okay, do I hear a motion for approval
So moved.
and second?
Second.
And are there any additional questions or comments to this? Okay, all in favor of approving the transformer purchase order, say yes,
Yes.
and that approves unanimously. Okay, and now we go to the work order. Can Mr. General Manager tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, ma'am. This project will replace about 1.125 miles of three-phase, 3-0 ACSR primary conductor. It's upgrading the conductor, and we'll be going with three-phase, the 336 all aluminum aerial cable there, and we believe, because we've identified this as one of the poorest performing areas, which is what we always do. Let's look at what's failing the most, and this is failing with this improvement in the conductor, because again, what we do now is we look to be able to size the conductor to give us flexibility in our flizzer system in order to switch out and carry a bigger load than just what would normally take just to serve what's on that. So this is going to give us switching options for our flizzer system, and we're going to reroute it along the road for better access, because we are committed to getting as much as we can out of people's farmland in the back. I want it on the road, so when you scout it, you can scout it from the road. You're not walking into fields in the middle of the night trying to find down conductor, and then when you do find it, you can use a bucket to get to it to repair it. So this, the initial estimate included in this year's capital budget was around $675,000, and we put this out, calculated it out, including a 10% contingency, which is essentially right on that at $676,775. And I recommend the board approve work order 1585 for this 336 all aluminum aerial cable on Smith Road feeder.
Okay, let's get our first and second motions and then we'll have questions. So is there a motion for approval of this work order
Yes.
and second,
So moved.
and then questions about it? Or comments? Anybody? Okay, all in favor of approval of this work order, say yes. Yes, and that one also passes unanimously. And now we get to the CUB pension plan fiduciary oversight review. Can
Thank you.
walk us through that?
I
please?
can. We have these nice little booklets that you all don't have. We get all of these and these quarterly reviews. So I want you to know we're not flying from the seat of our pants. The committee for the fiduciary oversight review for CUB pension plan for the June 2023 quarter met with the USI advisors on August the 21st. And you know what makes up that is Todd and Greg Jones and formerly Dudley and I. And so we met with them and we reviewed the economic indicators, is what they do. And despite the inflation weighing on household income, the stock market continued to rebound, which is good for us. And it increased in the second quarter by 8.7%, after obviously a dismal performance in 2022. The continued tightening of the monetary policy by the Fed, however, will weigh heavily on the economic growth and increase the risk of recession. Core CPI increased 4.8% at annual, and between the first quarter in 2023 and the second quarter in 2023, our pension plan increased by $766,325.62, or 4.82%, with $477,000 coming from return on investments. The committee agreed with the recommendations to reduce alternatives from 10% to 6% and to increase fixed income from 21 to 25%. And unless there are questions, I've got one more comment I'd like to make.
Are there, want to stop for questions?
Yeah, that'll be great.
Anybody have questions about this or comments about this? This is an
Quarterly.
okay. Quarterly that we look at this.
As the board knows, the board receives an in-depth, in-person annual report provided by our auditors, Brown, Jake, and McDaniel, which is separate from the annual in-person report from our actuaries at USI, which also give this complete A to Z. So my question, because this is a relatively new thing of reporting these quarterly reports to the board, is if the board continues to find this information useful and would like the staff to continue to provide quarterly reports, or would the annual report from our auditors and actuaries be sufficient? Because the truth of the matter is, and you can certainly understand, when we get this and they say go 4% less in alternatives and increase your fixed by 4%, and that's all we have to do, we're saying, yeah. I'm not saying, well, you need to consider 3%. You know, I mean, they are the experts in it. And unless there is an aberration where we say, oh, this is something that's way out of the routine, then I would always bring that to the board. I just don't know if you want to get these kind of quarterly reports, or can you rely on the annual reports with a directive to me is anything that we need to know sooner than that comes from these quarterly meetings that I would bring to the board. So I'm good with either way. I just felt like, man, I don't want to waste your time on this.
Okay, we actually have two things here. We've got an approval for what you've presented. We've also got a question whether to not do the quarterlies and just go to the annual and let Greg bring to us any issues in between. So first of all, let's approve what he has just shared. So do I hear a motion for that approval?
So moved.
And second? Okay, is there any questions about this review for this quarter? Anybody?
Is this, if we decide to have a review every quarter, what we've just had now in 5 minutes, is that about what we would see? So
Yes.
it's really not ruining our night or taking,
But the time that it takes you all to put this together, is that a significant amount of time?
Well, it depends on who does it. Dudley would have been much more concise. I'm trying to give you the a little bit more of the playback of what we got about the CPI and the things like that. It's not a burden to provide this. It's just I am a big believer in getting only what I need, and because the ancillary stuff is just tacked on. You say.
I think just the fact we got it, we looked at it, we see no problems, no issues, there's nothing we want to detail about. That's our quarterly review here.
Do you have something?
Yeah, two. One is, what's our requirement as a board? Is it an annual review, I guess?
Yes, sir.
So to comply with our regulatory requirement as a board fiduciary responsibility, need to do it quarterly or annually. You're still getting the report, you're still meeting with them quarterly?
Yes, sir.
I mean, and what's the cycle of the audit versus the annual report that they provide? Are they on the same, within a month or two of each other?
Yes.
So here, the other question is, I guess you couldn't slide one 6 months to be in the middle of the other one to kind of give you a middle of the year check point.
I can do we can do
You see what I'm
whatever
saying
you
now?
want.
Because I'm
Yes. You
I-
know,
here's-
I can even have them come in here
But-
and give and the full board their quarterly
The
report.
the only thing I really get concerned about, more just from a, when everything's running smooth, right, organizationally at the utilities, the only thing that really kind of worries you or could show you to go, hey, is making sure that you got the money set aside for the future. It just seems like you had like a mid-year check or like a 6-month check at least. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe you come and said, hey, every 6 months, come tell us what's going on. Or just put it in a packet and go, hey, just for your information and blow on and not even have to report it out. That's fine too. But I think somewhere annual seems, in particular, they're both together. That seems, not that we don't have, I have confidence, y'all. That's not an issue. It's just,
It would be super easy for me if it's not a deterrent for you in the time. This is an easy, just like the project status. You know, that's really, I mean, other than the fact that it's informational, it's not that the board is, there's no action
that's right.
associated with it. And if I'm telling, even if one of you thinks that, you know, it's no sweat and we're all good, I'm good to continue on. I like to offer it up to make sure that because one board member at one time thought that this was a good idea, that now every now and then we take a relook at that and say, well, is it worth doing or is it not?
Would it be worth, Greg, in other business, maybe mid-year, just in other business?
Oh, I
on the
think that
report, you
I
could
think that
say-
would that way you're not looking at an agenda item,
Mhm.
you know. I mean, and I can provide that easily every quarter. I mean, that's an easy thing. It's not as formal as doing that.
That's fine.
Well,
That's fine.
would that be sufficient to, if we moved it from approval of a
Right.
plan to just information like you
Because
do?
you'll have to approve the annual.
Yes.
That makes sense.
That would work.
Informational and annual.
Yeah. That
Okay,
would be
then
great.
Okay, we're still
So,
kind of
yeah.
got two things going here,
Can
so.
we, I had
Go
a
ahead.
question about
Okay.
the motion that's on the table.
Okay.
Can you,
Okay,
can you
back to that.
quickly because we just talked about a lot of stuff. Can you quickly re-summarize what the outcome?
The outcome, the recommendation by USI is to move because we've got percentages set up
Right.
for these different funds, and they're recommending that we reduce the alternatives from which are not stock related from 10% to 6% and increase the fixed income because interest rates are so high from 21 to 25%.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, then let's, this motion is gonna be to approve, the pension plan fiduciary oversight review that was presented tonight. So we need, did we get a first and second? Did we get-
Yes.
Okay, all in favor of approval, say yes.
Yes.
Yes. And that unanimously passed. Now then, we're back to whether to move this from a quarterly, approval to quarterly information, and I guess we need a motion. Are you
So
making
moved.
that? Okay, we've made a motion to move that from, an approved oversight review each quarter to information only each quarter. Do we have a second for that?
Second.
Okay, and any other questions that anybody wants to ask about that? Okay, all in favor say yes.
Yes.
And that unanimously approved, to change, make that change.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so other business, Mr. General Manager?
Yes, I left a FLISR report on your desk, which I try to do periodically, especially when it's timely, because it just happened not too long ago on the 13th, and the fact that it's more local, so you may have heard something about it. But Steve, for
Yeah, I did, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
sorry, buddy,
That's right. She was fine.
you know,
She said it happened. Blizzard was exciting, so.
it would have been quicker than this 4 minutes if we didn't have to check a target to make sure, because safety obviously is first. But what this Stephen does, and you can read through it. This is our premier of what we do here at CUB for customer service and the quality of service that we provide. We were able to get back out of the 2,465 customers. We essentially had 2,389 of them back on in 4 minutes and 43 seconds. And generally we're faster than that, but because there was a target on one we had to get checked out, which we did, and we closed that back in manually. All but 76 of the 2,465 were put back on in a relatively short period of time, which saved that hour and 18 minutes that everybody else had to wait. And this is where when we do our safety and safety numbers, how long and how often are people out, this is what we use. And by taking this number, how many hours are saved of people that would have been out that are no longer out. And what is that up to? 760,000 or something like that. So that's just a report. Now, also, I'm going to waive this because I printed it off the Courier, and it's letting us know that Norris is seeking a grant to study expanding their sewer service, and Cub's going to be a part of that as to whether or not it makes sense to pump it to Anderson County, which pumps everything to us, which will get us into South Clinton. So they'll be looking at that because Norris is under a TDEC order from 5 to 8 million. They're thinking they're going to have to spend unless they can do a short extension, pump it into ACUB, and ACUB pump it all the way down to us. I told them we're open to that. We'll talk about that. We'll try to help them any way we can. And also then, in the Courier on August the 23rd, our friends at Rocky Top, just to keep you in the loop, they're now doing they passed a 6% increase in water and sewer, and they've also said that they'll need another 6% increase next year. And they're already one of the highest in the region. They're having a difficult time meeting their TDEC order also.
Does the city run that one?
City does. KUB, as you know, has already said 5%, and Oak Ridge has already announced 8.4%. I don't know of any others right off the top of my head because I haven't seen anything in the paper on it. So we'll do another survey and find out where we are compared to the others, but it's only improving, is what I'm trying to say. Cub is one of over 500 Tennessee utilities encompassing 11 regions that are members of the Tennessee Association of Utility Districts, TAUD. TAUD provides its memberships with technical, legal, and operational support and training. TAUD serves as an advocate for member utilities through the formation and formulation of federal and state and local laws. Our own Greg Jones down there, the technology wizard, has been elevated to Region 3 leadership, which serves Anderson County, Campbell, Claiborne, Morgan, Scott, and Union. I'm proud of Greg, and I'm confident of his positive impact his leadership will have on representing CUB and the rest of the region. It's an honor, and I wanted the board to know that Greg's new position, leadership position at TAUD.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Moving on to CEDA. In 1964, Melton Hill Regional Industrial Development Association was incorporated to promote and foster existing industries and recruit new industries to Anderson County. The Board of Directors changed the association's name to Anderson County Economic Development Association, ACEDA, in 2005. There are 22 appointed members of the board, along with 6 fixed members. That includes the county mayor and the mayors of Clinton, Oak Ridge, Norris, Rocky Top, and Oliver Springs, for a total of 28 on the board. I was elected chairman of the ACEDA board in July of 2012 and have served continuously as chair for over 11 years. Other than Anderson County Chamber having 1 seat, CUB is the only non-local government organization that has the ability to appoint members. Anderson County government has 8 appointments because they provide the lion's share of funding. Cub has 4 appointments. Oak Ridge has 3 appointments. Clinton has 3 appointments. Rocky Top, Norris, Oliver Springs have 1 appointment each. Currently, Cub's 4 appointed members are myself, Jerry Shattuck, Bob Jameson, and Pam Rainey. And unfortunately, I understand due to personal reasons, Mr. Jameson has resigned from the ACEDA board. Now, that leaves an open appointment for Cub. And I would like to recommend, with the board of approval, Todd Loggins to serve on the ACEDA board. And that's my recommendation. And I'll-
Okay, that sounds like a great recommendation. Do we have a motion for approval
So,
moved.
and second?
second.
And any questions, comments besides congratulations? All in favor say yes.
Yes.
And that passes.
The county mayor put Ernie Bowles on that board also. So I'm telling you, we are going to dominate. Just a minute. That's not on TV.
Yeah.
X that off. Yes, sir.
I would suggest you stay abreast of Pam Rainey. She's got some serious health issues.
I know, honey. We've been praying for her and for Joe. That may come to where it's more than she can stand. She is a great member. She is a wealth of knowledge. She is a great supporter, and we will lose, as we lost with Joe when Joe got off of that board. But it hurts me for Pam. They are just fabulous people. All right. At the board's suggestion, we investigated the value and the cost of membership through Air Medcare, or Lifestar, if you remember. That was Jim's suggestion. And as I understand it, we investigated it pretty hard. This membership provides coverage for members of the family living with CUBs insured. The membership charges the net difference of what CUB's insurance would pay, and therefore, irrespective of the number of claims, Cub's annual health care costs would not be reduced. The maximum annual exposure for our employees now, all covered employees, and for all covered medical expenses remains the same, inclusive of any air ambulance service, at $2,000 per individual, maximum a year, and $6,000 max per family for in-network, and $6,000 for out-of-network per individual for any calendar year, irrespective. So, and I reviewed, because Jim brought it up, this Morristown claim. That one, it was on WBIR back in June of 2018. That that lady was charged $42,000, and then they credited out $36,000, which left her a balance of $59,000, and that's where the rub came for her. It was made very clear that this is a membership, not actually insurance. And for anyone that is on Medicare, Air Medcare cannot legally sell them this membership. The annual cost for CUB is $10,500. That's $75 per employee at 140 employees. I think we could get a break if we paid for several years. But since 2000, 13 years, and that's as far back as we could go because that's all Blue Cross had the records to look on, there has been only one CUB air ambulance claim made for Blue Cross. And of course, that was paid fully at no cost to the insured, whether it was a family member or not, I don't know. I don't know of any employee that did it. Unless the board directs differently, I don't plan to move forward with this membership. Even though when I read this about the Rocky Top raising their rates, I looked down because it caught my eye and it said, now this is less than a month old. Rocky Top Council voted to add Air Medcare membership as a benefit to the Rocky Top City employees. And this service would provide air ambulance service to city workers and their families at no additional cost. So apparently they found value in it. I can't recommend it, but I will certainly do whatever the board thinks is appropriate. I don't see the value for us. We have good insurance, and if it's medically necessary and it's not a convenience, I want to take my wife to Vanderbilt. I'd rather have her on a helicopter than driving a car. That's not medically necessary, and that's all on you, you see. But if you're in an accident and they airlift you, you know, you're going to be covered. So I don't see for us, other than somebody might say peace of mind, I don't see it as a benefit for our people. So unless you want me to move further on it, I'm just going to let it drop.
If you've had one claim in 11 years, 13 years, whatever
Actually,
it is.
23 years, going back to 2000.
Oh, 2000.
Yeah,
20.
2000.
If that one claim was less than what you would have paid for the premium for 1 year.
Right.
So you saved all that. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, the only thing is if it's an out of network claim, somebody's out of state or whatever, it is kind of what it is, and you got out of network benefits kick in.
But then the worst case scenario is that you
What?
push up against your max.
That's right. What you have to look at is some policies do not have an air ambulance coverage, and
Right.
therefore you should supplement it, but your policy does.
Right.
So, no, I agree with you. So,
Any other comments? That doesn't really need approval, does it?
No.
That's just
No, the only way I'm
information.
moving is if you tell me to move.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you researched that and came up with the best solution to what our employees.
Well, I think it was worth a good investigation.
Sure.
And I think after we did it, I can't, the value's not there.
Yeah.
All right, last thing I've got is the Director of Accounting and Finance update. As you know, Dudley Fagan has retired from Cub. We miss him every day, by the way. And as is my practice for senior staff positions, before I look outside the organization, I always look internally for the qualified personnel with the credentials, the skill set, and the proven ability to meet the challenges of whatever the open position is. And Cub is fortunate, in my opinion, to have someone that meets and exceeds all of the requirements for this position. However, after being offered this position and being told that there is no one in the country that deserves this position any more than him, and no one I'd rather see more than him in this position, the individual, after taking time to consider sharing with his family this opportunity and evaluate the satisfaction, and the word he used was joy, he gets out of his current position, he declined the promotion, wishing to stay in his current position until his retirement. I understand and respect his decision. Cub will continue to reap the benefit of the outstanding contribution he makes to this organization. One of the finest people I've ever met in my whole life. Got to tell you, fortunate to have him. So, having no other internal employees ready at this time to move into the director's position, I turn to the outside utility industry. And fortunately, I've identified a candidate that has 10 years of progressive utility management experience. He has a Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration with a major in accounting and a Master's of Business Administration with an accounting concentration with a 3.6 GPA. This individual has 5 years as accounting supervisor at one utility before moving on to his current employed utility, where he's held the position of manager of finance and accounting for the past 5 years. We currently are working out the final details, both at Cub and at his current employer, and I expect him to be on board in mid-October. That's good news for
That's
us.
good news.
That's all I have.
Comment, questions, anything? Mr. McNally, anything you want to add, ask for about anything?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Clapp?
No, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Coons?
Good to go.
Okay, I think everything's great. Thank you again for all you all are all doing. Meeting adjourned.